I would like to welcome you to what I believe is a historic day in Indiana education history, in what has been a pretty historic week in Indiana education history, in what will go down as an incredibly historic year in Indiana education history as we transformed our state's education system. So we're glad you are here to join us today. My name is Tony Bennett. I'm Superintendent of Public Instruction. We welcome you to the signing of these two bills. I would like to make a number of acknowledgments before we start, kind of give you an order of events, and then get started to the important piece. First, throughout the last 4 months and even before, there were many heroes that are bringing options to Indiana's children. And my particular heroes are members of our General Assembly. I've said this on many occasions. We had the opportunity to put together an agenda, and we put it in front of our legislators, and our legislators never let the words "children come first" leave their minds, their hearts, and their lips. And so I want to recognize, please stand up, all of our members of the Indiana General Assembly. Let's give them a round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Particularly, I would like to recognize our two leaders of our education committees, our Senate Education Committee Chairman, Dennis Cruz, our House Education Committee Chairman, Bob Baining. Bob, please stand up. Our Senate Education Committee members, Senator Carlin Yoder, Jim Banks, Jim Buck, Senator Luke Kenley, Senator Gene Lysing, and Senator Scott Schneider. Our House Education Committee members, Representatives Rhodes, Brown, Claire, Frizzell, Hewer, Noe, and Jeff Thompson. All I have to say is we asked and you delivered. Thank you. There is a person here who I would also like to recognize, and I hope she's here, who in my opinion gave as much to the education reform movement and giving children choices as any person I've ever met. And today she serves as the Commissioner of Higher Education. Before that, she was our state senator, and I sometimes refer to her as the mother of Indiana charter schools. Senator Commissioner Teresa Lubbers. Teresa, please stand up. I think we all know we wouldn't be here today without you, Teresa. Thank you. Also, representing the Indiana Association of Public Charter Schools, Mr. Russ Simnick. Our Indiana Virtual Schools, Monique Christensen and Lynette Quinn. Two friends who have fought for this cause for many years, our leaders of the Chamber of Commerce, Kevin Brenniger, Derek Redelman, and Jeff Brantley. Our friends at the Indiana Catholic Conference, Glenn Tebby. Where's Glenn? The Indiana Non-Public Education Association. Where's John Elsesser? Working. The leader of the Milton and Rose Friedman Foundation, Robert Enlow, with his staff, Dale Bawalta, and Leslie Heiner. The folks from School Choice Indiana, Fred Clips, Luke Messer, and Lindsey Brown. And you know, we are all here for a specific reason. And those, and I said this at our charter school and our school reform rally, I've had the opportunity many times to have this question asked to me. Tony Bennett is Superintendent of Public Instruction. Why do you support private schools? Why do you support charter schools? Why do you support homeschools and virtual schools? And we are reminded today by these faces sitting in front of us that all of our children, regardless of whether they go to school, are our public. These children are part of our public, and it's imperative that we make the right decisions for them. So I want to acknowledge our children today. You are the reason we're here. And while I will introduce Governor Daniels in just a minute, I think it goes without saying we would not be here without the best governor and the best lieutenant governor in this great nation of ours, Mitch Daniels and Becky Skillman. We will have a few sets of brief remarks. I'm going to go down the order of events, who will do that. Then we'll get to the signing of the bills, and then I'm sure Governor Daniels will take some questions. Would like to first tell you that the first speaker today is a man who said at the beginning of this session, "We will deliver." And David Long, when you said that, you meant it. It's a man of incredible integrity, incredible spirit, and an incredible heart for Indiana children. So we'll hear from David Long. David, thank you. I'll get to you. I'm going to introduce Brian, our Speaker of the House, who authored the charter school bill, who is a man who has been doing school reform for as long as some of us have been alive. It doesn't make you old, Brian. But Speaker Brian Bosma. Then we will hear from Russ Simnick, Robert Enlow, and a parent, Randy Duke. And then, of course, we will hear from Governor Daniels. So with that, I would like to turn it over to the head of our Senate, our President Pro Tem, David Long.
Thank you, Tony. I'll be very brief. We have a lot of people who want to speak. This session, there were 4 key education bills that we passed, each of them a piece of landmark legislation on their own. But there was one, in my opinion, that stands out as special, head and shoulders above all the others, and that was the voucher bill, House Bill 1003. More than any other piece of legislation, this one literally shouts from the rafters of this building that something's different. Things have changed. Indiana is heading in a brand new direction, and we are not looking back, period. Now, what this does very simply, and it's particularly meaningful, I hope, to a lot of the parents that are here today, it simply says if you're a person of limited means and you care about your children's education and you want something different for them, now you have an option. Now you have a choice. No other state in the United States of America can say that to their citizens, but Indiana can because of this piece of legislation, because of these people sitting over here today. So thank you all for helping us get that done, guys. Tremendous. We did this for one reason, for all of you sitting down here in front of us. All you future voters, right? Right? That's right. You're what really matters. You're why we work so hard to get this educational change in place. So remember that you mean a lot to us, and this session, and this memorable session, will be because of you. It's an honor to be up here today. It's an honor to stand with everyone up here, and thank you for having me speak today. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Tony Bennett and David Long and the others that we'll be hearing from this morning. My name is Brian Bosma. I've had the honor and privilege of serving as the Speaker of the House during this most eventful and historic legislative session. Historic in many ways. For some that are here today, this is the end of a very short march, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 months. For others, this is not the end of a long march, but the end of the first part of a long march. I asked our staff to pull a couple of bill histories. Tony had indicated I'd been doing this for longer than most of us have been alive. I take issue with that with respect to Tony. I'll take that with the young people here, maybe a few others. But I did ask them to pull a little bill history and just to refresh my memory as to where this all began. In 1993, a couple of folks in the Indiana House thought that it would be a great idea if a child could pick whatever, a family could pick for their child whatever school they wanted to attend and have the money follow that child. That was in 1993. The author of that bill was, ironically, Representative Bill Crawford, and a new young legislator by the name of Brian Bosma, good-looking, full head of hair, kids, much thinner, not much thinner, but a lot of hair. And I'm just looking at it, committee hearing granted, reassigned to Ways and Means, again and again and again. And then in 1995, we thought we'd take a different tact and introduce the first charter school legislation in the state of Indiana. And a long line of authors and co-authors, including myself, Representative Bob Baining in the House, Senator Teresa Lubbers in the Senate, and every year, bill passed on second reading, reassigned to the Committee on Ways and Means. In 1997, bill passed the House 80-19, no second reading allowed in the Senate. In 98, no committee hearing granted, reassigned, passed the Senate, reassigned, passed the Senate, reassigned. It wasn't until 2001 that charter legislation was adopted in this state, and many of us know that we've done nothing but defend it since. And no one has seen a bill pass the House that fulfills our constitutional obligation, not to institutions, not to buildings, not to systems, but to provide for each of these young people and so many more across this state the education that is best for them and their family, whether it's at home, in a public school, in a charter school, or in a private school. And that's precisely what has happened this session. It is an historic day, not just in Indiana, because I believe as the first part of our march ends, this march will begin in virtually every other state in the nation, some of whom are already on the march, many of whom are sitting and watching. So today, ladies and gentlemen, as four of us get the privilege of signing this bill into law, it is a day that we will look back at years from now and say, this is the day that Indiana got it right, not for institutions, not for buildings, but for these children and those to follow. Thank you, and thanks for being here today.
Hi there, I'm Russ Simnick, President of the Indiana Public Charter Schools Association. In my brief few seconds, I just want to say thank you. And I see so many familiar faces, and thank you. Thank you to Irvington, thank you to Crystal House, to all the schools here. Today we celebrate the culmination of not months, but of years of hard work. And people like Senator Commissioner Lubbers out there, we want to say thank you very much for all your work. Today, 3,500 kids sit on waiting lists just for a shot at a better education in a public charter school. And with the signing of House Bills 1002 and 1003 today, we've removed, frankly, ridiculous obstacles to parents selecting those options for their children. We want to say thank you to the legislators who worked all session very hard, and certainly to the governor and lieutenant governor today. And we're not just changing the landscape of education in Indiana, but the entire nation is watching us today. I just returned from Washington, D.C., and outside of the obvious things that they're talking about, Indiana education comes up next. So for that, for you kids, for all those parents who will now have those high-quality options, we want to say thank you.
Good morning. Now in school, you're supposed to say good morning. Good morning. What a day. In 1995, Milton Friedman said, "I sense we are on the verge of a breakthrough with school choice, which will sweep like wildfire throughout the rest of the country." Thanks to Governor Daniels, Lieutenant Governor, Speaker Bosma, Senator Long, all of you here, and so many others, Indiana is no longer on the verge of a breakthrough. It has broken on through to the other side. With the passage of a comprehensive set of reforms, including HB 1002 and 1003, the charter and voucher school bills, Indiana has reaffirmed its commitment to public education, put its trust in parents, and realigned our education system to put the needs of children ahead of the interest of adults. You know, our highest priority as citizens should be to narrow the too large gap between the haves and the have-nots in this country, and to make sure that every child who graduates with a bucket full of human capital that they can use to innovate, create jobs, and improve our society as a whole. The signing of HB 1002 and 1003 will help accomplish those goals. Implemented correctly, and that is our next task, to implement these correctly, these bills will help achieve and increase the achievement in our schools, both public and private. And finally, make sure that the quality of a child's education is no longer based on their parents' zip code or their family income. Let me put this in a little bit more human terms. I have a very good friend who is a single mother of a child who happens to attend a poorly performing school in Indianapolis. Until today, she couldn't afford private school tuition, and she couldn't afford to move. Now she will have the same options that so many of us have taken for granted for so long, and her child will have an opportunity to succeed at life and in school. Nothing could be more moral, and you are to be applauded for all of your work. Thank you very, very much. You know, Russ said that he was in D.C. and he heard that the eyes of the nation are on Indiana. I've been traveling the country 5 times in the last 2 weeks, and every single place from Pennsylvania to D.C. to everywhere I go, the eyes of this country are on Indiana and education reform. We are at the head of the class when it comes to transforming K-12 education. Thanks to the courage and leadership of Governor Daniels and so many others, we have only seen the early fruits of giving parents a school choice. I am confident that the nation will follow the lead of this great state, and I am convinced that the best is yet to come for the children in our state and our country. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I appreciate being asked to speak here. And on behalf of my daughter Miranda and myself, I'd like to thank everyone who helped get these education reforms passed. It's a great, as a parent who, I've raised 2 other kids through the IPS system. I've seen the downfalls and the pitfalls. I know that there's issues. And this year, or since my daughter, this youngest daughter of mine, went into kindergarten, her best friend went into kindergarten in a charter school. I've been able to see side by side the comparison of the lessons and the motivations. There's obviously a lot of room for improvement in the public school system. I think these reforms are going to help that out. I can, only time will tell how successful it's all going to be. But I think between these reforms and the Common Core state standards that were adopted last August, I think it's going to be a great year next year for change, or it's a great time for change right now. But it is a monumental step in the right direction. And like I say, I am so thankful that my daughter will have more options next year than she did this year. Thank you.
In 2008, there was an ad campaign for governor that had vision, courage, and results. About 6 years ago, Governor Daniels, you had a vision. You had a vision to transform our education system. I've had the honor to work with you for the last 2 years, and I've never met a more courageous man. A guy who put his money, his heart, his passion where his mouth was. And today we have results. It brings me an incredible amount of pleasure. I'm incredibly honored. I'm humbled to serve with our nation's best governor, a man who puts children first, who puts education first, puts the needs of our citizens first. So it brings me an incredible honor to introduce to you the guy who was the vision, the courage, and who led to the results, our Governor, Mitch Daniels.
Thank you very much. Thank you. If we've learned anything in Indiana the last 6.5 years, we've learned that change can happen, but change is hard. Change is always unsettling. Change always brings uncertainty. Always easier to knock it down than to see it through. Indiana has been through a lot of change. Every single year has brought some, but none bigger or more important to our long-term future than the change we are about to make real and make the official law of this state. And if change is hard, I've learned that change in education is hardest. It is. And so, at the expense of just a little redundancy, I've got to repeat a few thanks that have already been very appropriately extended. I want to start with legislative leadership, David and Brian. This could be said in many contexts about them, but again, this is the most graphic example of spectacular legislative leadership. That leadership comes in different styles. I've sometimes seen it manifested in caution and defensiveness. So much easier to deflect an issue, protect the flock against a tough vote, send something back to committee, take no chances, take no risks. Then, of course, you make no progress. There's a different style, which Indiana has been blessed with in both, crucially, in both its legislative bodies. And that is the style which finds a way to assemble a majority, to shape and reshape and craft, to supply courage where it's lacking, reassurance where people go wobbly, and to bring big change across the finish line. That is a very rare form of legislative leadership. I'm speaking here not just about our own history in this state, but about 50 states that I know a little about and a U.S. Congress that I know a little about. David Long and Brian Bosma, you're as good as they come, and Indiana is so lucky to have you and have you at the same time. Leaders without brave legislators don't create big change, and it's already been well said, but to those who stood tall for these bills and the rest of the education package, most folks here, I said education's the hardest thing to change. It is a tough business. I said in the State of the State that those who advocate change in education must be prepared to be misrepresented and misunderstood. And that happened. That happened all spring. People either innocently or not so innocently spread confusion and misinformation about what we were trying to do, what the effects would be, what the provisions of the bills would be. And most folks don't know, but I know, what these legislators went through when week after week they calmly and resolutely and patiently faced all kinds of pressure, incredible pressure, to sell out, to pull out, back off. The fact that you didn't is something I will always remember, and this state should always remember. Thank you for your bravery and for what you have made possible. To all our partners, those like Russ and Robert you've heard from, those who were with us last Saturday, Stand for Children, the Mind Trust, Teach for America, the New Teacher Project, all those idealistic, brilliant young people whose hearts have called them to teaching and are now welcome in Indiana and populating the schools represented here and those like them. Couldn't have done it without them either. And then finally, the indispensable cog, the coach, Tony Bennett. You talk about guts. You talk about courage. None of us can come close to him. What he's endured, the unfair things said, untrue things said, and he saw it through. Why? Same reason we're all here. Because we have placed, as he has always placed, children, students at the center of every education decision in our state. We say today, as we have said so long, but now we back up our words, that every child is precious, that every child deserves an equal chance to be all they can be. Today is about education. It's also about social justice. It's about equality. Regardless of race, regardless of income, every child deserves an equal chance, and every parent deserves an equal chance to make the decision about their child's future that we trust them to make wisely. Randy's been through 6 lotteries, and his number never came up. Well, brother, 7 and 11, I guess, are the lucky numbers, and on the 7th try, thanks to these folks, in the year 2011, your number just came up. More importantly, Miranda's number came up. Congratulations, and thank you for helping us. So on behalf of Randy and all the parents like him, Miranda, my new friend Diana, all the children here, all the children they are here to represent, with joy and deep gratitude, we will now make it the law of the state of Indiana that henceforth every child and every family has an equal opportunity to see that their children are educated in a way that will lead to brighter and fuller lives, and therefore to a stronger and more prosperous and more just state for us all to live in.